A 23-year-old man walks into a safe, crowded hiking trail and never walks out. 7 years later, his body is found just yards from where search teams once stood. Police called it an accident. The evidence says someone controlled his final steps, and the person who knew the truth helped lead the search. So why was the real answer hiding in plain sight? Before this story begins, I need you to pause for just 1 second. If you believe justice should never be buried, if you believe silence should never protect the person closest to the truth, then subscribe right now, like this video, and share this story. Every click helps bring attention to cases that almost disappeared forever. Tonight, I'm taking you to a quiet mountain trail in rural Pennsylvania, a place locals still describe as peaceful, harmless, and safe. But in the fall of 2004, a young man named Ethan Caldwell, only 23 years old, walked into that forest for a short afternoon hike, and never came back. No screams, no struggle, no witnesses who could clearly say who he was with. 7 years later, a construction crew uncovered something hidden just a few yards away from a popular overlook, close enough that hundreds of people had unknowingly walked past it for years. At first, police believed this was a tragic accident. Then they reopened the case. And when they re-examined the timeline, the alibis, and the person who searched the hardest for Ethan, they realized the truth had been standing beside them from the very beginning. Stay with me, because in this story, the most dangerous suspect is the one everyone trusted to help find him. On October 9, 2004, Ethan Caldwell woke up in his small rental duplex on the edge of Brookfield Township, Pennsylvania. He worked as an entry-level GIS technician for a regional utility company. Quiet work, long hours, and little recognition. Friends described him as polite, withdrawn, and painfully responsible. He still helped his mother with rent after his parents' divorce, and he had recently put his own graduate school plans on hold. That Saturday morning, Ethan argued with the one person he spoke to every day, his older sister, Lydia Caldwell. The fight wasn't loud. It never was with them. Lydia had just moved back to town after losing her job in Pittsburgh, and she wanted Ethan to help her convince their mother to sell the family house and relocate. Ethan refused. He believed their mother needed stability, not another move. Just before noon, Ethan texted a coworker that he planned to take a short hike at Ravens Ridge Trail, a familiar overlook outside town where he went whenever his anxiety spiked. He left wearing gray hiking shoes, a dark hoodie, and a small black sling bag. At 1:46 p.m., a nearby gas station camera captured him buying a bottle of water. That is the last verified image of Ethan Caldwell alive. By dinner time, his phone was already going straight to voicemail. And Lydia was the first person to report him missing. By the next morning, Brookfield Township was already talking. Lydia Caldwell stood in the parking lot of the local police station, clutching her phone and repeating the same sentence to anyone who would listen. "My brother would never disappear on purpose." Officers began where Ethan said he was going. Ravens Ridge Trail. It was not a dangerous place. The paths were wide, clearly marked, and used daily by joggers, families, and retirees. A volunteer search team combed the lower trails before noon. By afternoon, a state rescue unit joined them, pushing deeper into the wooded ridges and shallow ravines. They found nothing. No phone. No jacket. No blood. No sign of a fall. Late that evening, a hiker told police he believed he had seen a young man matching Ethan's description standing near the overlook around 3:30 that afternoon. He remembered one detail. Ethan wasn't alone. From a distance, the witness noticed a second person standing slightly behind him. The hiker could not tell whether the person was male or female, only that they appeared to be talking quietly. Not arguing. Not touching. Just standing too close for strangers. By Monday, dogs were brought in. They tracked Ethan's scent to the edge of the main trail. And then, without explanation, it stopped. Completely. 3 days after Ethan vanished, a volunteer searcher stepped off the main path near a narrow patch of scrub brush, only a few yards below the overlook. That was where they found it. Ethan's black sling bag. It was sitting upright against a tree trunk, clean, dry, and strangely visible, almost as if someone had placed it there on purpose. Inside were his wallet, driver's license, debit card, and the unopened bottle of water he had purchased that afternoon. Nothing looked damaged. Nothing appeared disturbed. For investigators, the bag immediately changed the tone of the case. If Ethan had fallen, the bag would have gone with him. If he had been attacked, something inside would have been missing. But everything was there, perfectly intact. Lydia collapsed when officers showed her the photograph. She told police it was impossible that Ethan would walk away without his wallet or phone. He hated being unprepared. Even short hikes made him anxious. Detectives began quietly shifting their focus. This no longer looked like an accident. It looked controlled, deliberate. Someone had been close enough to Ethan to convince him to step off the trail. And whoever that person was, they knew exactly where the search teams were least likely to look. Once Ethan's bag was found, detectives began working backward through his life. The first person they questioned was his supervisor at the utility company. Ethan had recently requested time off for graduate applications, and co-workers admitted he seemed stressed. But no conflicts surfaced. No threats. No unusual messages. Next came a former boyfriend. Ethan had ended the relationship quietly several months earlier. The breakup was awkward, but not volatile. Phone records showed no contact in weeks. Then there were the strangers. A middle-aged man who frequently lingered near the overlook. A woman who jogged the trail almost every evening. A park maintenance worker who happened to be on duty the afternoon Ethan disappeared. Every name was logged. Every routine dissected. Nothing connected. Only one person remained constantly present in every early moment of the investigation. Lydia. She coordinated search volunteers. She printed flyers. She answered reporters' questions. She called detectives almost daily to ask for updates. Her grief appeared raw and convincing. When police finally asked where she had been on the afternoon Ethan vanished, Lydia answered instantly. She said she was home, filling out job applications, streaming television in the background, alone. There was no one to confirm it. But no one questioned her either. Because who would suspect the person who never stopped looking? 4 years, the case barely moved. Ethan's file was boxed, reopened, and boxed again. Until 2011. A private development project began cutting a service road just beyond the lower edge of Ravens Ridge, less than 50 yards from the overlook where Ethan had last been seen. On the second morning of excavation, a backhoe struck something solid beneath a layer of packed soil and rotting leaves. Human remains. The location stunned investigators. Search teams had passed within steps of the spot in 2004. But the slope dropped sharply, hidden by brush and broken stone. It had never been searched from below. Dental records confirmed the identity within days. It was Ethan. The medical examiner found blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. Not a fall. Not exposure. Homicide. When detectives reopened interviews, they returned to something that had felt harmless before. Lydia's alibi. 7 years earlier, she said she had been home all afternoon, applying for jobs online. But the laptop she once owned was long gone. So investigators subpoenaed archived internet records from her service provider. What came back changed everything. There was no activity from Lydia's address between 12:58 p.m. and 4:41 p.m. Not a single connection. Not even a failed login. Her digital footprint was silent. During the exact window Ethan disappeared. The break that finally narrowed the case to one person didn't come from technology. It came from memory. A retired school bus driver named Martin Harlow contacted police after seeing the local news coverage about the remains. 7 years earlier, Martin had been the hiker who told officers he saw Ethan near the overlook with someone else. Back then, he said he couldn't tell who the second person was. Now, he said something different. He told detectives the image had never really left him. He remembered the way the second person stood, slightly turned away from the trail, one hand resting on a hip, the other moving sharply while talking. Not aggressive. Controlling. What made him come forward was a still photo shown during the news broadcast. It was a picture of Lydia holding Ethan's missing poster. Martin recognized her posture immediately. He told detectives he was now certain the person beside Ethan that afternoon was a woman. About the same height. Same build. Same dark hair pulled back tightly. He even remembered the voice. Not loud. Not emotional. Firm. Like someone giving instructions. Police compared Martin's updated statement to Lydia's original interview from 2004. Her clothing description. Her hairstyle. Her timing. Everything aligned with the Overlook sighting. For the first time since the case reopened, Lydia Caldwell was no longer just the grieving sister. She was standing directly inside the timeline. Detectives brought Lydia Caldwell in quietly. No cameras. No reporters. No dramatic arrest. Just a phone call asking her to come down and clear up a few details. At first, she was calm. She smiled politely. She even thanked the investigators for never giving up on Ethan. But when they placed a printed copy of her Internet activity timeline on the table, her posture shifted. The silence stretched. They didn't accuse her. They didn't raise their voices. They simply asked one question. If you were home that afternoon, where were you between 1 and 4:41? Lydia stared at the paper. Her answer came slowly. She said the records must be wrong. She said maybe the modem had reset. Then the lead detective slid a second photo forward. It was a still image pulled from a traffic camera near the access road leading to Ravens Ridge. The resolution was poor. The face was unclear. But the car was unmistakable. Lydia's silver sedan. Timestamp 2:17 p.m. The same afternoon, Ethan disappeared. Her breath caught. Her hands folded tightly in her lap. For the first time in 7 years, Lydia stopped asking questions. And quietly whispered, "I just wanted him to listen to me." Lydia's voice barely carried across the interview room. She said she had gone to Ravens Ridge to talk to Ethan. Not argue. Not threaten. Just convince him to support her plan to move their mother out of town. She told detectives she felt trapped. Jobless. Back in a house that still treated her like a temporary guest. Ethan, she said, was the only person who could influence their mother. According to Lydia, she called him when she realized he was heading for the trail and decided to meet him there instead of waiting at home. They stood near the overlook. Exactly where the hiker had seen them. At first, the conversation stayed calm. But when Ethan refused, again, Lydia said something inside her snapped. She accused him of choosing comfort over her future. Of letting her fail quietly while he stayed safe. She admitted she picked up a loose landscaping stone from the edge of the trail. She said she didn't remember lifting her arm. Only the sound. A dull crack. Ethan dropped instantly. She panicked. She shook him. She called his name. When he didn't move, Lydia dragged him down the slope, breaking branches and skin along the way, until the brush swallowed him. Then she walked back up the trail. And later that night, she was the one who called police. Before you click away, I want you to sit with one final truth from Ethan Caldwell's story. For 7 years, the person who organized the searches, answered the media, comforted their mother, and stood beside investigators, was also the person who knew exactly where his body had been left. Not a stranger. not a predator hiding in the woods, but family. This case reminds us that evil doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it shows up quietly, wearing grief, carrying posters, and asking the same questions the rest of us are asking. Lydia Caldwell was later convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 22 years in state prison. The court called it a crime of emotional desperation, not premeditation, but the silence that followed was deliberate. Ethan never had a chance to walk back down that trail, and the people who loved him spent years searching for a truth that was standing right beside them. If stories like this matter to you, stories that uncover the hidden side of justice, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with someone who believes forgotten victims still deserve to be heard. Your support keeps these stories alive. And sometimes, it's the only way the truth gets another chance to speak.